r/AskReddit, NSFW, Prison Guards of Reddit. What's the most disturbing thing you've dealt with? Oh boy, here we go. My first fight I responded to was a stabbing. Trying to contain that situation with nothing more than ox spray and gloves was a pretty grim welcoming to corrections. I try not to look at their charges, because I find it hard to treat them the same after I find out that they are a violent ex-offender. Almost every time an inmate is polite and seems like a decent enough person, I end up hearing their case in the news, and it is 9/10 sex charges. I saw a guy who slipped in the bathroom have his hip come completely out of his socket and his leg came out at a ridiculous angle. Trying to have a conversation with someone and de-skill at them when you can hardly see them because so much feces has been spread over the window. During a strip search, an inmate used his hands to make his butt cheeks say, "Excuse me sir, but do you have a breath mint?" But by far the most disturbing thing is the complete lack of accountability. 90% of these guys have convinced themselves that they are the victims and have done no wrong. Never accountable for anything and have a sense of entitlement that is more frustrating than anything to deal with than any other aspect of my job. Edit, just adding a couple extra, seeing as you guys seem to be enjoying this. Becoming accustomed to being threatened is a pretty strange phenomenon. I didn't realize I had become desensitized to it until I was threatened by an inmate telling me, "I'm going to murder you and ape your wife." I told my family that it happened a few weeks later, just as a "oh by the way" sort of thing, and they were mortified. Whereas I had almost forgotten it happened. An inmate who was infamous for packing drugs in his rectum came in and completed his dry cell stint in segregation. Other inmates didn't believe him when he told them he didn't have any drugs on him this time, so they decided to check for themselves. They accomplished this with a Dasani water bottle enema. The host of medical conditions you see during strip searches is alarming at first. The list contains testicles the size of mangoes, genital warts larger than their peen, AIDS lesions always make me gag, and of course peen amputations always catch you off guard. During a strip search, an inmate used his hands to make his butt cheeks say, "Excuse me sir, but do you have a breath mint?" That's fucking hilarious. Classic Ace Ventura. I knew a prison guard at Winson Green in Birmingham, and he said the most disturbing thing about Fred West was how jovial he was. The officers kept forgetting and laughing at his jokes and stuff, and then thinking, this guy actually tortured his own daughter and buried her in concrete. I just read the Wikipedia page about him. First I had heard of him, and holy hit, that dude was ducked. And his wife Rose was just as bad. It's crazy to me that people that ducked up even exist, let alone are able to actually find someone who is just as bad. Same here, what the actual duck? I can't imagine how they got away with it all for so long. Not me, but my cousin. One day she found a guy cutting his peen open and sticking tiny plastic balls inside the wounds, and the inmate wanted it to heal like that so when he gets out it would pleasure the ladies. Edit, not fixing my small typo. Okay, that's it. For a second there I thought you typed "that's lit." Not really disturbing in a traditional sense, but still made me uncomfortable. I'm a co at the Denver complex for the Department of Corrections. Seeing James Holmes, the Aurora theater shooter, come through our processing after getting sentenced. I'd seen this man's face and heard the stories for 2 years on TV, but seeing him in person just slapped me in the face with a weird sense of reality. I don't really know what I expected, but it was pretty disturbing to me personally. If that doesn't count, then seeing an offender hanging from a sheet in their cell. Crazy. How are interactions with this person? I never spoke directly with him, but he appeared very somber and quiet. I work closely with all the prisons in the state. There's one notorious inmate who likes to jerk off and throw his semen in everyone's face. Fellow inmates, guards, it doesn't matter. He's not strict to semen. Sometimes piss and hit. Just whatever he can get his hands on. Yikes. I can smell your runt. Former prison guard. I had to escort a new prisoner to medical. I had no idea why until we got to medical. He had bandages all over both legs and he walked stiff-legged, couldn't bend his legs. When he sat down, the nurse started removing bandages to expose rotted, abscessed flesh. He was a heroin addict and was injecting in his legs. His legs were so swollen and gangrenous that the smell almost put me down. When he tried to bend his right leg, the skin split and infection oozed all over the floor. The doctor looked at me and immediately called for another guard to come to the room. I asked what was wrong and she said, "You're going into shock. I need you to leave before you pass out." Surprised at what she said, I protested, but she demanded that I leave. On my way out, I started to feel lightheaded. I looked in a mirror and noticed that I was sheet white, normally a brown guy. I've seen people hanging. I've seen people stabbed and shot. I saw a guy blow his head off with a shotgun. When I was in the Corps, I've pulled burned bodies out of a crash CH-53E. This, by far, was the worst thing I've ever seen. Seen similar wounds and oozing on a guy in medical who came in after a cocktail bomb he tried to throw at his ex slipped out of his hand and broke at his feet. The screams as they pulled the skin off, I could only give a it followed with a nervous chuckle. What else can you do? So much poo. The smell was horrific apparently, but I don't smells too good so didn't bother me. My dad is retired from the Federal Bureau of Prisons and started out in the California prison system. There are a lot of stories that us kids didn't find out until he was retired. He was attacked with a pipe and almost died. He doesn't know who attacked him or why. He was on a kill list from the Mexican mafia and my mom got threatening phone calls from people saying they were watching us kids at the bus stop. He transported inmates back to Cuba, where they were promptly walked around a corner and shot and killed after they were handed over. I'm pretty sure he shot and killed fleeing inmates, but he won't confirm it. He has walked in on many suicides and saved a few people trying to commit suicide. He won't talk about a lot of things, like riots. He was head of the SWAT team, so he has seen some hit. I've tried to get him to write these stories down, but he won't do it because he doesn't want anyone to get in trouble. Edit, about the SWAT team. I never saw it written down, so it could have been SRT instead. I know there were 2 special response teams, and he was the head of one of them. Most of these stories came from my mom as he doesn't like to talk about things he's seen. One of the few things he ever told me was that Manuel Noriega was an asshole. For real. He could make some good money with a decent editor. Have him write down the things that happened, but change some small details. That way nobody can get in trouble. Use a pen name and use fictional prison names. Short stories like that could really be a great seller and shed some light on our prison system. My friend's mom was a prison guard when I was younger. We went there our whole class, and she told us about how inmates would break down mentally. One story I remember her telling multiple times. She was on night shift and was suddenly alerted by screams of help. The screams came from a cell, and her being careful she looked inside the door window. There, in the farthest corner, an inmate was on a chair, screaming, pleading for help, and trying to avoid something on the ground. "Mom, what's wrong, inmate?" "Inmate, it's the chickens. Please get them out." While still standing on the chair, jumping and crying. "Mom, what chickens? Where are they?" "Inmate, everywhere. Please get them out." So friend's mom opened the cell door and guided the invisible chickens out. The inmate calmed down, but as friend's mom closed the cell door, he screamed, "You forgot one." So she went back in and got the remaining chicken. Note: the inmate in this story was a big as biker dude. He was probably on drugs, but I think it's a fun story. So my mom's friend opened the cell door. That could have gone other differently. True. As much as this one made me laugh, I thought the same thing when I read that too. Cold been real bad. One of my old roommates worked in the county jail. He came home one day with a stone face, so I asked him how work was. All he said was, "I saw a guy eat his shampoo because he couldn't shower, then uncontrollably puke and hit himself. That's how my day went." Jail, not for me. I cracked up and was uncomfortable. Well done. Prisoner reasoning: this is bullshit, I need a ducking shower. What is wrong with this pile of assholes? Duck it, I'm gonna eat my shampoo. There is such a huge leap between sentence 2 and 3. It makes sense. He probably knew he'd end up puking. And if he puked all over himself, they'd have to let him shower. My stepsister watches over criminals with severe mental disabilities in a home that is on lockdown. These people are dangerous and many don't know the difference between right and wrong. One night she heard commotion in one of the rooms and walked in on a 14-year-old boy being raped by a 20 or so year old man. Don't know all the deets, but that's all I need to know. Thank God there's people out there who can do these jobs, because I definitely could not. Why do they house children with adults? Most states don't consider people to be adults until 21 if they have been in the juvenile system before they were 18. Duck this thread. Too many peens getting chopped off, and there's even a ducking pirate. Till my peen would not survive prison. I have two. One co-friend at a city lockup knew an inmate who everyone called the gingerbread man. He would get naked and cover himself head to toe in poop. He was trying to get insanity, but his crimes were drug dealing related. He was beaten rather badly a number of times by the 3 or 5 guys he shared a cell with. He stopped eventually, then went to real prison. Another co I know knew a guy who was kept solo because he kept trying to give people his HIV, filling plastic pen tubes with blood. He would try to stab people and then blow into the tube. He died one night when my co-friend wasn't there. When he broke a light in the infirmary and started slashing himself up and threatening to give anyone who came in HIV. They locked the door and told him to wash up under the shower. He wouldn't, and he bled out hours later. Some co's get reprimands and demerits or whatever, but nobody lost a job because the investigator could understand not wanting to be given HIV from a bleeding psycho armed with long shards of broken glass. Edit. I just asked. And the guy with HIV didn't die. He passed out from blood loss and was revived. And the thread winner is the gingerbread man. No kids. That's not a big cookie. Did he just stand there with a big, toothy grin holding a legs spread, arms out position? I'm wondering what the other guys in his cell were doing while he was covering himself with it. I'm having difficulty holding in my laughter at work thinking of one dude sitting in the middle of a room, rubbing it all over himself, while 4-5 other guys watch trying to get him to stop. Come on. Jing. Not again. It didn't work last time. It's not going to work this time, and proceeds to get more and more frantic as he becomes more and more thoroughly covered in it. I was a co at a maximum unit for several years. I'll just make a list. I had a guy slice his own neck in front of me. Had a guy hang himself on a night we were very short. I had to stand there and wait several minutes for another person before entering the cell. We were able to save him. Had a guy hang himself and succeed. Had a guy collapse in front of me and die. He had a brain aneurysm. Had a guy try to connect his tattoo gun to the light. He electrocuted himself. He died. I've caught people having X twice. Once was willingly and the other was for protection. I've been on the 3rd row and the power went out. It was pitch black for about 20 seconds. Power loss was always the scariest thing to me. Had a guy who had come in with a relatively minor sentence, now serving over 100 years consecutively due to crimes he committed while incarcerated. He would attack any co he had a chance to. He was notorious for popping his door open and attacking cops. Had different guys try to attack the nurses on a few occasions. If you ever go to prison, don't sow this. They're the ones who decide if you need to go to a hospital or go back to your cell and drink water. Had to fight a psych patient in the back of an ambulance on a transport. Had to sit through multiple surgeries because someone has to have eyes on the inmate at all times. Once I had to wrestle with an inmate when he was coming out of his anesthesia. He was out of it and freaked out. I have tons more, but I'm on mobile and it's a pain to type this much. Had a guy collapse in front of me and die. He had a brain aneurysm. It can happen anywhere, at any time. That's why it's terrifying. S02E04. Yeah. It was pretty surreal to have someone talking to you and walking around collapsed dead in the blink of an eye. At first we thought he had ordered medication and killed himself or something. He had passed out in his cell, and when we got there he was awake, but a little disoriented. We called for medical and a wheelchair. In prison, medical takes their time getting anywhere. Once they got there he insisted on walking. We escorted him out of his cell. He was kind of sluggish but seemed okay. Then he collapsed and died. After the investigation and everything we were told there was nothing anyone could have done. Not a prison officer, but my dad spent 26 years working as one in the UK. Brixton and Belmarsh. Heard a lot of crazy stories including how the IRA prisoners used to be. Mess strikes used to happen frequently. They used to cover themselves in their own feces. Wait for the guards to go into the cell and attack them. They then just started hosing them down through the service flap. He also told me swallowing razor blades was fairly common amongst prisoners. Although one time this guy didn't think that would be enough, so he slotted a bunch of razor blades amongst the bristles of a toilet brush and then rammed the whole thing down his throat up to the handle. He lived. I kind of glanced over that last paragraph and then internally winced. Now I can't bear to reread it to confirm what I thought I read. Ducking like and subscribe.